becoming a symbol of the partial government shutdown that's expected to last until 2019. Trash also built up in Washington, D.C. as federal workers were called off the job heading into Christmas holiday. Democrats and the White House have been unable to agree on language pertaining to the president's border wall in a spending bill that could reopen closed areas of the federal government. President Trump has relaxed his request for $5 billion for a physical barrier to a lesser number of approximately $1.6 billion or more. He is promoting a steel slats fencing design that the White House thinks some Democrats will support. Existing legislation allows for bollard fencing along the southern border. Lawmakers went home for the Christmas holiday over the weekend, as the Senate adjourned until December 27. President Trump was at the White House residence on Monday morning, having canceled his Florida holiday to be in Washington for the duration of the partial shutdown. There, he harped that Senate Democrats working against his wall had favored fencing until he called it a wall and ran for office and attempted to clarify his border security demands. He said the $25 billion he's seeking for border security is not the same as the wall money. The wall is different than the $25 billion in border security. The complete wall will be built with the shutdown money plus funds already in hand, he claimed. The reporting has been inaccurate on the point. The problem is, without the wall, much of the rest of dollars are wasted. He appeared to be responding to claims from inside and outside the White House that he would take $25 billion for border security over 10 years. That breaks out to $2.5 billion a year for border security, including $1.6 billion annually for the wall. Democrats have otherwise offered Trump $1.6 billion in border security money that cannot be used on a concrete border wall and may not allow him to build the steel-slated fence that he's begun pushing. That bill places restrictions on where the president is allowed to build the barrier, limiting operations to the Rio Grande Valley. A summary of the legislation explicitly states that funds would be limited to the currently deployed fencing design along the southern border, such as bollard fencing, and cannot be used for building any barrier in the Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge. A White House source told DailyMail.com that Trump wants the restrictions on where the fencing can be built dropped. Another offer of $1.3 billion for fencing also contains restrictions on where the wall can be built, making it a no-go as well for the administration. Trump is refusing to sign any continuing resolution to fund the government that does not allow him to build a border wall. He rejected a bill Thursday that did not have the $5 billion for just the border barrier, leading to Friday night's government shutdown. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has not responded to his administration's latest offer of $1.6 billion for steel slats without restrictions on where he can build the fencing. Incoming White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney revealed the offer on Sunday morning. "We moved off of the 5 and we hope they move up from their 1.3, he said on Fox News Sunday of the state of play. He also warned the shutdown could last well into the new year, when Congress changes hands and a new legislative session begins. It's very possible that this shutdown will go beyond the 28th and into the new Congress," Mulvaney said. "I don't think things are going to move very quickly here the next couple of days," he added. With Christmas on the horizon, Congress has adjourned until Thursday, December 27, and lawmakers are expected to return to work late next week. The new Congress will be sworn into office on January 3. If Mulvaney's prediction is correct, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi will begin her speakership under the cloud of a shutdown. Even if her caucus passes legislation to end it, the onus will fall to the Senate to also pass it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already said he won't bring any bill to the floor that the president has not already agreed to sign. A partial government shutdown began on Friday at midnight amid a fight over funding for the president's border wall. A furious Trump blasted it as a Democrat shutdown as it was about to begin in a video of himself addressing the nation. "We're going to have a shutdown. There's nothing we can do about that, because we need the Democrats to give us their votes," he said. "Call it a Democrat shutdown, call it whatever you want," he added, The shutdown hopefully will not last long. Thank you very much. On Sunday, the president spent his day indoors, tweeting occasionally about news of the day. He said that only a good old-fashioned wall works for border security, even though drones and other technology are fun and can also be used. The only way to stop drugs, gangs, human trafficking, criminal elements, and much else from coming into our country is with a wall or barrier. Drones and all of the rest are wonderful and lots of fun, but it is only a good old-fashioned wall that works, he said. Negotiations appear at a stalemate. On Saturday, Vice President Mike Pence and Mulvaney went to Capitol Hill to speak with Schumer, while Trump had lunch at the White House with hardline Republicans who back his wall. Still talking, was all Pence had to say of the matter to reporters. On Sunday, Mulvaney sought to pin the blame for the shutdown on Democrats. The ball is in the Senate's court, he said. We made them an offer yesterday afternoon. He also claimed that what Trump wanted built falls within the arena of what Democrats have already approved. The president tweeted out a picture yesterday: the steel fence, the steel slated fence with a pointed top and so forth, that's what we want to build. And the Democrats mind, that is not a wall, Mulvaney said. So they have offered this $1.3 billion to build the barrier that we want, but then they go on TV and say there's no money for a wall. We've already told the Democrats we want to build what the president tweeted out. It doesn't have to be a 30-foot-high concrete. Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace pressed him on the issue. So, you think that they would approve $1.3 billion to build this steel picket fence? Wallace asked. Mulvaney replied, exactly. Well, the steel barriers that the president tweeted out. He added, I think it's a really good question as to whether or not this deal can be cut before the new Congress comes in. Mulvaney also hinted that Pelosi was going along with the shutdown to appeal to her liberal base. I think there is an implication here for Nancy Pelosi's election for the speakership. I think she's in that unfortunate position of being beholden to her left wing, to where she cannot be seen as agreeing with the president on anything until after she is speaker. If that's the case, again, there's a chance we go into the next Congress, he said. Pelosi's office hit back in a statement that said, as Mr. Mulvaney well knows, House Democrats are united in their opposition to the president's immoral, expensive and ineffective wall. The sooner the White House recognizes the need to stop the posturing and start serious bipartisan talks, the sooner we can end the Trump shutdown, her Deputy Chief of Staff Drew Hummel said on Twitter. Mulvaney indicated negotiations on the border wall are moving between the $5 billion that Trump needs to fully fund his wall and the $1.3 billion that Democrats originally offered. We're between $1.6 billion and $1.5 billion, he said on ABC's This Week. He brushed aside the infamous Oval Office shouting match a few weeks ago, where Trump said he would be proud to shut down the government, and he would take responsibility for a shutdown. It's on me, the president said at the time. He is proud to be having the fight, Mulvaney said. This is what Washington looks like when you have a president who refuses to sort of go along to get along. On ABC's This Week, the Office of Management and Budget Director, who's also serving as acting chief of staff, indicated there was nothing he could do to change the president's mind. You're not the chief of the president, you're the chief of the staff. You're not going to change the way the president behaves, the president thinks, the president operates, he said. Senator Bob Corker, a Republican, was critical of the shutdown on CNN. This is a purposely contrived fight over. At the end of the day, even no matter who wins, our borders are still going to be insecure, the outgoing lawmaker from Tennessee said on CNN's State of the Union. President Trump will stay in Washington through Christmas and has canceled his plans to go to Mar-a-Lago for the time being. Trump has spent the weekend tweeting a defense of the actions of his administration, the shutdown, pulling U.S. troops out of Syria, and the resignation of Defense Secretary James Mattis. First Lady Melania Trump, who had already gone to Mar-a-Lago, will return to the White House to spend the holidays there. Due to the shutdown, President Trump will remain in Washington, D.C. and the First Lady will return from Florida so they can spend Christmas together, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said. Both chambers on Capitol Hill anticipate the impasse will continue into the first weeks of January. Pelosi warned Saturday night that it is unlikely that there will be any progress to end the Trump shutdown in the next several days. In a message to her caucus on Saturday night, the Democrat, who is the presumed next House Speaker, claimed until President Trump can publicly commit to a bipartisan resolution, there will be no agreement before January when the new House Democratic majority will swiftly pass legislation to reopen government. Please be assured you will be made aware of any developments to reopen government in the days ahead. After Pence's visit to the Hill on Saturday, a Schumer aide said that the vice president made an offer but unfortunately, we're still very far apart. Schumer said the Trump shutdown could end immediately if the president simply dropped his demand for border wall money. If you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall, Schumer said. Trump had been scheduled to travel to his Florida resort with his family for the end-of-year holidays, but said on Friday he would stay in Washington if he and lawmakers failed to strike a budget deal to avert a partial government shutdown. He left it unclear at the time, however, how long he might remain in the nation's capital. Trump tweeted on Saturday, "I will not be going to Florida because of the shutdown, staying in the White House." He added the hashtag MAGA, or Make America Great Again. The president's initial plans were to spend 16 days at the so-called Winter White House, the nickname given for Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in West Palm Beach, Florida. The U.S. government will officially be partially shut down through the Christmas holiday. Politicians headed home for holidays, while 420,000 federal employees were left to work without pay over the holidays, and an additional 380,000 workers were furloughed. The first day of the shutdown played out in uneven ways. The Statue of Liberty was still open for tours, thanks to funding from New York State, and the U.S. Post Office was still delivering mail, as it is an independent agency. In Arizona, the Grand Canyon was remaining open with state funding, the governor said. The memorial to Oklahoma City bombing victims was to continue to operate, but the George H. Bush Presidential Library Center at College Station, Texas, said its National Archives facilities were closed during the shutdown. Trump's re-election campaign sent out a fundraising email late Saturday launching what he called the most important membership program ever, the official Build the Wall membership. The president urged donors to sign up. "The crisis of illegal activity at our southern border is real and will not stop until we build a great steel barrier or wall. Let work begin," he tweeted on Saturday. Trump has dismissed reports on the shutdown, his removal of troops out of Syria, and the protest resignation of his Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis on Thursday as fake news. While Trump stayed behind in Washington to negotiate with Democrats, his wife, Melania, flew to the family's Mar-a-Lago compound in West Palm Beach, Florida. It has long been the family's tradition to spend their Christmas holiday at Mar-a-Lago, the First Lady's spokesperson, Stephanie Grisham, told CNN. Her plans to travel with her son to their Florida home for his winter break have not changed this year. Trump's ideal $5 billion budget would be enough for 215 miles of barrier along the border. Less than half of that amount would cover 100 miles of South Texas frontier that does not currently have a fence, according to Dallas News. A senior White House official confirmed to DailyMail.com on Saturday that the Trump administration wants 700 miles of wall at the border. Some of the requested $5 billion fund would replace old and wobbly fencing. The official said that the Trump administration still expects Mexico will pay for the wall, even though the nation said it would not. It's about getting the appropriate amount of money that's necessary to build those barriers and being able to have the flexibility to build them, the senior administration official said. Trump says he wants to erect a great steel barrier or wall and shared a picture of a prototype design showing a 20-foot steel slat fence on Friday. Trump notably said he would build a border wall, but would have Mexico pay for it. He dismissed the shutdown as the doing of Democrats, tweeting, "Our great country must have border security." Along with his video, "We don't want people coming in that aren't supposed to be here, we want people to come in through a legal process," he says to the camera. "It's very dangerous out there, drugs are pouring in, human trafficking. So many different problems including gangs like MS-13. We don't want them in the United States. We need a great barrier, and if we don't have it, it's never going to work," he said. The shutdown may cripple the nation during the holiday season as thousands will be forced to work without pay or will be furloughed, meaning placed on leave without pay. Some of the Americans forced to work without pay include 53,000 TSA employees, 54,000 Customs and Border Protection agents, postal office workers and air traffic controllers. The shutdown will affect 9 government departments including the Departments of Agriculture, Commerce, Homeland Security, Housing and Urban Development, Interior, Justice, State, Transportation and Treasury. NASA and state parks will also lose their funding. It means 42,000 Coast Guard employees and 5,000 Forest Service firefighters will be forced to work without pay, according to projections by the Senate Appropriations Committee. However, agencies that are essential to the safety of life and protection of property will continue to operate. Holiday travel will not be halted in the shutdown as TSA and border agents will continue to work albeit without pay. The U.S. Postal Service, Medicare reimbursements, and Social Security will also continue to be operational in the shutdown. The government will only be partially shut down as Congress already funded 75% of the federal government through September 2019. No one knows just when the shutdown will end. Trump himself said he's totally prepared for a very long shutdown on Friday in the Oval Office. This is the third government shutdown for the Trump administration. On January 20th of this year, a shutdown ensued after Republicans refused to fund DACA. Another shutdown followed on February 9th, which Trump stopped hours later. The longest ever government shutdown took place in late 1995 to